are listening to Think Theory Radio.
Hello and welcome to Think Theory Radio, the show that brings you topics outside the mainstream realm of thought and ideas to make you think. And I'm your host, Damien Perdue, your guide on this metaphysical ride of audio delights. And of course, I'm joined by Paulie C.
Yo.
And today we are also joined by special guest, Frater Justice.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Researcher and I'm going to say historian on secret societies. And
Sounds about right.
yeah, okay, I just made it up. You can claim that as your title now.
Okay. Hey, everybody, I'm Brother Justice, Frater Justice here, repping Barrington 522, Barrington, Illinois, barringtonmasons.org. That's my lodge. We do great things for the community. But yeah, I'm also a Rosicrucian and Knight Templars, so it'll be cool to kind of like talk about, the different aspects of this mysticism.
Yes,
so.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things to talk about is the occult and esoteric.
And I'm very glad to be here. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Second time.
Thank you very much.
We have much to talk about, much to discuss. And you were talking about the different organizations you're part of, but you're not just a member. I mean, you are really into the history.
Yes.
You go digging in. You've been to all different kind of like Masonic libraries all around, right? Like worldwide.
Yeah. I was out in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
At the Embassy of the Free Mind, also formerly known as the Bibliotheca Philosophica Hermetica. I was up there looking at what they had and comparing what was in their library to what the Scottish Rite Library had to what I had in my library. Some books I checked out later and purchased them later when I got home. I also met another guy in Enschede. Shout out to Brother Clemens Hontag. He's a Rosicrucian frater and brother out there. He had a Masonic antique store with old regalia, ephemera, books, just all types of stuff. And I acquired some Rosicrucian books from him when I was out there. And in Germany, shout out my girlfriend, Annika, love you, girl. She would take me to these crazy castles in Germany, and some of them were like Knight Templar castles, and she was my photographer and tour guide and translator, and it was really a great experience. I'm looking forward to going back soon. So
yeah, no. Before the show was talking about, I was out in Malta and had seen some of the Knights of Malta.
That sounds crazy.
And whenever I travel, especially like in Europe, I'm always looking for the like occult symbolism and all the old buildings and the churches and the castles, because there's so many little just symbols and icons thrown into the architecture and the embedded stonework and the gargoyles, and there's just some, and you could some of them read, it's like a book, you see the different kind of stories that are happening within the architecture.
I used to watch that cartoon when I was a youngin', Gargoyles. That was pretty cool.
That was a good one.
It was a little creepy, but it was cool. Those are really cool. I love all that old architecture.
Yeah.
What do they say? The old quote, I forgot who said this, but architecture is like music frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to describe architecture,
yes,
in my opinion. It tells a story, especially Rosslyn Chapel. All the little hidden details, the ornate. It's just very beautiful, very mind-boggling, really.
And it goes back. I mean, this is, and we'll get into that too. It's this is. Some people don't know that there's the legends or the history of like Freemasons and the wisdom passed down as a lineage going back down to King Solomon, down to Egyptian, pharaohs and the mystery schools. Right.
What I love about it is, even in Chicago, we walk past these beautiful buildings and we just see them every day. We take it for granted. But if you really stop and look at the beautiful edifices, the beautiful building, the architecture, the work that went into it, you could truly see the blood, sweat, and tears, the craft, geometry at work. Sometimes they hide little symbols in the work and stuff like that. It truly opens your perception to a whole nother world and I hate to, give this cliche example of like the Matrix or what have you, but it kind of is like that.
Yeah. Well, I've always looked at kind of like architecture and especially the structures of cities are kind of, a way that humans have tried to emulate universal structures or God's work in a way, right?
Right.
It's kind of like sacred geometry and kind of this creation of like ventricle systems that flow and connect together, and just the mathematics, and it's astounding. But that's not why you're on the show. Not that, I mean, I'll talk about architecture for the whole hour, but I know we last time you were on, we got into more of the history of Freemasons.
Correct.
And this time you wanted to come on and talk about more about the Rosicrucians.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
The Rosy Cross.
Yes. So I'll just get into real quick the history and just knock that out of the way.
Let's do it.
So in Freemasonry, we have a parallel and overlap with another organization, actually two, the Rosicrucians and Knight Templars. Historians, would argue, there's no connection. Historically, we can't prove this. However, if you are along in your Freemasonic journey and climbing the grades and the degrees, the higher degrees, I say this in air quotes, because Freemasons will argue, there's no degree higher than Master Mason.
Yeah.
Unless you could count.
Yeah,
unless you could count, there's higher degrees.
Right.
Yes, they might not be as impactful or as profound as the Master Mason degree, because that's like the culmination of the ancient craft. However, the French and the Scottish and all these other groups have higher grades, and they even call them that in German. It's Hauptgrades, the high grades. So the higher grades of Freemasonry tend to be Rosicrucian and Knight Templar leaning.
Okay.
So I did notice that, and when I was initiated into these higher grades, I was starting to piece the puzzles together of where this comes from and why are we talking about this and the history, and it's just a whole rabbit hole that I went down. And I'm actually working on a manuscript. I'm almost finished. So if you like this conversation, this talk here tonight, you could definitely check out my book that's in the works. I'll post updates on my YouTube channel, but I'll talk about that at the end. But I'll just give a little bit of foundational information about the Rosicrucians particularly.
Yeah.
There's three foundational Rosicrucian texts from Germany. That would be the Fama Fraternitatis in 1614, the Confessio Fraternitatis in 1615, and the Alchemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz in 1617. Now, the Alchemical Wedding in particular is said to have been authored by a Lutheran theologian, Johannes Valentinus Andreas. In 1625, the manifestos were examined by a Dutch court of Lutheran and Calvinist professors. It was determined that the Rosicrucians were a superstitious and magical sect. Martin Luther was actually opposed to the Rosicrucians when he found out about it. And the Rosicrucians were branched from the Lutheran Church, even though there was opposition to it. Now, the Rosicrucians were inspired by various different schools of thought. The Rosicrucians were inspired by the Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus, also the Egyptian alchemist and Gnostic Zosimos. The aim and mission statement of the Rosicrucians, first and foremost, was to heal the sick, and that gratis, so for free. The broader views of the order included, advancing knowledge, particularly esoteric and spiritual knowledge, reforming society and religion, uniting science, philosophy, and spirituality. Typically in society, these are things that are separated.
Right.
But this is a very progressive notion in these times, in the 1600s. Also spreading enlightenment while maintaining secrecy.
Yes.
Because this was highly heretical to the Protestant Church and the Catholic Church. There's no historical proof that an actual Rosicrucian order existed during the time of the publications of the three manifestos. However, the manifesto spread throughout Europe and America. We do have evidence in 1694 in Pennsylvania. German pietist Johannes Calpius formed a Rosicrucian influenced group called the Society of Women in Wilderness in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Historical Society actually contains various manuscripts from Calpius, and I've heard myths and legends about Ben Franklin being a member of this group. However, we can't really prove that. This is secret, and maybe not. But I've heard rumors that it was highly likely that he was a member of that organization. In 1856, though, the African American mystic and yogi Pascal Beverly Randolph. He actually did start the first self-proclaimed Rosicrucian society in the United States, called the Fraternitas Rosicrucis. Sorry. And in 1915, Harvey Spencer Lewis would bring from France to the U.S. The ancient and mystical order Rosicrucis, also known as Amorc. And coincidentally, there's actually an Amorc Lodge in Chicago. I believe it's called Nefertiti, if I'm not mistaken. And in Europe, particularly in Germany, you have so many Rosicrucian groups that spring up. Since there is no evidence that this group ever existed, people just took the manifestos and took the idea and the concepts and started their own Rosicrucian groups. And this is actually, according to the manifestos, this was actually the goal and aim of the Rosicrucians.
Yeah.
Was to make up your own group and take our ideas and run with it and have it, generationally passed down, in secret, a secret tradition. So in Germany, you had Rosicrucian groups. Adam Weishaupt from the Illuminati fame. He was highly influenced by Rosicrucianism. He would devour books. One of his colleagues at the university in Ingolstadt would give him books on the topics, and he would just devour them. And he came up with the idea to form his own group called the Illuminati. Also, there was a rival group to the Illuminati called the Order of the Golden and Rosy Cross. This group was highly influential in spreading the ideas of Rosicrucianism throughout Germany and all throughout Europe. Also, you had another group called the Union of Loyalty and Truth and Three Rosy Crosses. In France, you had a whole lot of these groups spring up. The Elo Cohen, or the elected priest, which would be the precursor to the Scottish Rite. And in the Scottish Rite, you had the Rose Croix. Also, you have the Rose Croix d'Orient. You have Gerard and Cosses, or also known as Papist Kabbalistic Order of Rose Cross. And then you had the Salon de Rose Croix, which was a Rosicrucian-inspired artistic collective and esoteric study group started by Josephine Peladon. This group inspired many French Impressionist painters. And their influence was really strong in the art world.
I believe they also had their own kind of musical score as well.
Yes, they would travel around and give these, presentations and art galleries and sort of like the pop-up shop back in the day. That's kind of like their vibe. Nice. And a very obscure figure that I'm reading about. In England, you have a lot of groups that spring up. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia was a Masonic Rosicrucian group started by Robert Wentworth Little in 1866. In 1888, 3 members would leave the SRIA, S.L. McGregor Mathers, Westcott. These guys would form the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was another highly influential group in Europe at the time. Also, even though this group here, Ordo Templi Orientis, they started by Theodor Reuss in Germany. However, once Reuss retired, Aleister Crowley, the famous British occultist, would end up joining the order, incorporating the laws of Thelema into the group, and then he was the leader of the OTO. OTO is still around today. I believe Chicago has an OTO lodge. I don't know the name of it. I'm not a member. So yeah, it's really crazy how all these groups sprung up. I would also like to mention that there's other groups that coexist with the esoteric ecosystem that we have here. Obviously Freemasonry. We have Martinist groups, which is a whole nother topic for another time. We have the Theosophical Society. Ironically enough, in Wheaton, Illinois, we have the Theosophical Society headquarters of North America. We have the Knight Templars. The more research into Rosicrucianism, you will see various splinter groups with shared Rosicrucian themes. The Templars, for example, were started by Hugh de Payen and Saint Bernard of Clairvaux in 1119. Saint Bernard was a devout Christian mystic, and when the Templar order disbanded, Jacques de Molay was their last Grand Master. A lot of the mystical aspects of the Templars did in fact get absorbed by other groups, particularly the Rosicrucians, and a lot of the higher Rosicrucian grades or degrees have Knight Templar themes. Even in Islam, you have this Rosicrucian influence, actually. I believe it or not, no one knows this. I was actually, a long time ago, I had some friends of mine that were Muslim in high school, and I asked them about Islam. And they were in a Sufi order, and they brought me over and initiated me into their Sufi order. And they taught me some esoteric practices.
Okay.
They really do practice the way of the heart. So in Islam, Sufi is very similar with the parallel of the Greek word Sophia, which is knowledge. So there's definitely some parallel too with Gnosticism and the Sufi orders. In Rosicrucian, you find, esoteric Christianity. You find Kabbalah. You find alchemy, Greek and Italian philosophy, cosmology, natural history, and also Egyptian and Greek mystery schools. And in Freemasonry, you find elements of Rosicrucianism, particularly in the Scottish Rite, particularly in the Royal Order of Scotland, the SRIA. And in America, I'm a member of SRICF, which is the American version of SRIA. You have the Red Branch of Erie and the Holy Royal Arch Knight Templar priest, which is also a Knight Templar invitational, which is highly Rosicrucian influenced. So there's definitely some overlap there.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of information. I hope everyone took notes, because there will be a test at the end of the show. Paul, you ready? I'm just messing. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, nice. There you go. See, right on time. We're going to come back in a couple minutes. I want to get into the differences between Rosicrucianism, Freemason, Illuminati, also the old time period of the Enlightenment, and how this secret society kind of started with occult wisdom and everything. So we'll be back right after this on Think Theory Radio.
Yeah, it was cool to get all the information out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, you did it.
Because then we could just talk about whatever.
Right now, yeah. Then we could just go off all that. That's why I'm thinking, probably won't even do calls at the end, because I don't think we're gonna have enough time.
Yeah.
There's we basically have 33 minutes left, and I feel like we're just gonna talk. Unless you really want to take calls, we can take.
Is there any way you can filter the calls? Be like, hey, what's your question? Or
screen them,
yeah.
What are you looking for? What are you not looking for?
There's people who have serious questions about the order. What do we do?
Gotcha.
What's the ritual? What do we, some of the teachings, the lessons. How do I join? Where can I find more information?
I got you.
What I'll do is before the next break, I'll give out the number and I'll let people
Okay.
So we'll see.
Maybe stress for the questions too, because usually
Yeah.
start shoehorning their anecdotes into it. Yeah.
My brother's name was Mason. He was a good guy.
Did you have a question? Yeah, what's the line on the Bears game?
Right.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today I'm joined by Frater Justice.
What's going on?
I can't say that word without giving it some kind of accent. Frater.
Frater. Yeah.
Which means brother, right?
Yeah.
Fraternal,
Right.
fraternity.
Right.
Singular.
That's what we call each other in Rosicrucianism. Frater, or if there's more than one frater, it's fratres.
Gotcha. Okay. So you just broke down the history of Rosicrucianism as you were talking. I was thinking of things to ask, and before the show, before you were coming on, I was looking up some of the history of Rosicrucianism, and one of the things I did find interesting was kind of the mythos around it, more so than the other secret societies, where you kind of, the Illuminati was started by Adam Weishaupt. Who the Freemasons was started by. That these lodges existed. Where Rosicrucianism kind of started out of thin air.
Yep.
Right. There's a mystical, mythological person of Christian Rosencreutz, who some say didn't really exist.
Right.
But then I was thinking about it. It's like, well, what's what's the perfect cover for a secret society is to have people think there is no secret society, right? You know, like,
Yeah.
so the concept of it, as you were talking, and you said how like these manifestos spread throughout Europe and eventually the U.S. What was the pinpoint time of either the first lodge or when like if you as a Rosicrucian, where do you start the history of Rosicrucianism?
Well, historically, Kelpius, when he came here in the 1600s, and started, the Society of Women in the Wilderness. However, this wasn't incorporated. This wasn't an actual, established entity. It was just like a little commune in the forest in Pennsylvania. But it would be first with Pascal Beverly Randolph. He was the first to start a Rosicrucian group in the United States, and then shortly after would be Amorg.
Okay.
And then Max Heindel with the Rosicrucian Fellowship in San Jose, California. All these groups flocked to California for some reason. Even Manly P. Hall with the Philosophical Research Society.
Yeah, well, the Theosophical Society too, like
Boda, Builders of the Adytum. So
just like everything, Hollywood. It started in Chicago, man, and then went to.
It's true. Chicago was like a hotbed for all these, mystical, spiritual orders and stuff like that. There's still some that are left today. You see them. They're not paying me to name them,
right?
But, so I won't do
there's
that.
There's also like tons of books written, and we actually have the occult bookstore here is the oldest one in the country.
Yes, a lot of occult books were published in Chicago.
The Kabbalion.
A lot of them.
You ever read the Kabbalion?
Oh yeah, that's
the Three Initiates.
Yeah.
Or, they think it was what's his name, Atkinson.
There was a few people that they thought penned that, and then they found out recently who it was. It's been a while since I've read it, but I do have like the new edition that came out a few years ago. It's a really great read, and that's a foundational text for someone starting on their new age path. I highly recommend that book, actually.
Yeah, it's a pretty good book. I mean, it's definitely one of the first books. I think it was written in like 1918. That started to tie in current scientific understanding. Like there's little bits of like particle physics in there.
Right.
And
All is the
ancient
mind.
wisdom.
The mind is mental. And
exactly,
all this,
energy. And one of my favorite things of that, he talks about chance and saying how like there really isn't any chance if you think about the actions that led to it. So like if you roll a dice and it lands on a 7 and a 1 or whatever, you think, oh, that's just chance, just luck. But in actuality, it was the way your hand moved, the way the wind hit it. Like, there's all these things that created those two numbers appearing. And then he said, well, if you go backward in time, you could create a pathway all the way to the origins of the universe that led to the moment in time when you rolled the dice. Which I was like,
well, with wormholes and stuff like that, it could be plausible, but it's very complicated. It's above my pay grade.
Well, but see, that's another interesting thing about the era of, from the 1500s to 1700s, the Enlightenment and the secret societies emerging. And I think a lot of people who don't know a lot about secret societies or Freemasons and the Illuminati, they hear, they see something on YouTube and they think, it's they're just running the world and it's all this and that. But this was a time when scientific understanding was really starting to emerge in Europe.
Right.
And the church was heavily against it.
Yeah.
So a lot of these societies started as a way to kind of hide the scientific knowledge and spread it through the lodges and to other people and have this enlightenment. I mean, that's what Illuminati means, to illuminate. And I think that's something lost now, is that this was kind of a counteract to religion in a way.
Yeah. There were some martyrs, though. I mean, Galileo and Giordano Bruno, and I mean, these guys really had to sacrifice their lives to put the truth out there.
Copernicus.
Yeah. I mean, it was very unfortunate. But now we're coming full circle. I mean, you turn on the news and you're seeing, people testifying about UFOs and all this. I mean, so everything's coming full circle, and it's actually a really good thing what you're doing with this broadcast here, Think Theory. is because a lot of people are having these questions now, and they want deeper answers to what's going on. And I feel this provides an outlet for people to get accurate information. That's why I'm on here, to talk with people, to let them know that, hey, we exist, we're out here doing great things. It's not bad things that you see on the internet, unfortunately. Sorry to disappoint you. We're actually doing really cool stuff, and it's I can only speak for myself. A full disclaimer. I don't speak for any of these organizations that I'm a member of. I'm only speaking from my personal experience. But if I had to call it anything, it would be, even though it's not like this, I would say maybe perhaps like white magic or something like that. If I had to categorize it in layman's terms, it's a very beautiful ceremonies, rituals, lessons that are very self-empowering and spiritually empowering. So
yeah, and there's something to, I mean, even in in neuroscience and psychology, they talk about the concepts of rituals and even how it helps the mind.
Yeah.
Doing even daily things. Getting up and having your cup of coffee in the morning, or listening to a certain song when you wake up. These certain kind of rituals, and I think that's a lot of what what you come from is. It's not about like, oh, we're casting spells on people. It's more about this kind of a psychic connection with your brotherhood and with other members, and you do these rituals to kind of like tap into that energy.
Or it's also known as the egregore consciousness. For instance, AMORC, I'm not a member, but they have something called the celestial sanctum, where like at a certain time of day, all the members pray at the same time and think about similar things, like healing the world and peace and love, and they do this at a certain time every day. And when you also tap in to that energy and other people are doing it, you'll start to see you yield results, positive results. Now, the complete different would be something like Peter Carroll's chaos magic, which is like you're forcing your own energy and creating something out of your own self, whereas Rosicrucian is more of like a collective mind, a group consciousness sort of deal. Same with Martinism as well.
Okay. So what brought you into Rosicrucianism? Like, what, you were already a Freemason?
Yes, I was already a Freemason. However, I was told that in the Scottish Rite, you'll see some Rosicrucian influence in some of the degrees. So I was joining different Rosicrucian groups, trying to find my path. I'm no longer a member of any of these groups apart from the Masonic Rosicrucian group. But when I joined the Scottish Rite, there was a degree, the Knight of Rosicrucianism of Herodom, or the 18th degree in the North, we call it. In this degree, candidates are taught a lesson about a new law of love. That's what they literally said it in the brochure or the program. And when I saw that and saw the degree, I said, where have I heard this lesson before? And then I remembered, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will, by Aleister Crowley. And I was like, wait a minute, that opened up a whole new portal, because I started researching that. And then in the degree, the fundamental lesson is keeping Christ or God or whatever your creator is close to your heart at all times. Rosicrucianism, some groups take it a little bit more of a new age route, like AMORC, for example, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a pretty cool twist. But my Rosicrucian group, for example, is very esoteric Christian based. You have to be a Trinitarian Christian. Okay. You could even be a Gnostic Christian, but you have to be a Christian, right? So I read a quote from Harvey Spencer Lewis, the founder of AMORC in the United States. And he wrote, quote, "The Rosicrucian realizes that at any moment, at any time of day, we can turn our thoughts inward and immediately contact the mind and consciousness of God. We know we do not have to be in church to pray. We realize that we could talk with God on a hilltop, under a tree, in a canoe, in an automobile, in the cellar of your house, in the garage, or in the corner of our bedroom. God is not reached by turning our thoughts outward to some point in the heaven, but turning our thoughts inward to the temple within, where the consciousness of God is always ready to respond and give help." This was a deeply profound quote that I read from Spencer Lewis that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
And when I saw this Masonic degree in the Scottish Rite, that message really resonated. And then I started doing more research into different Rosicrucian groups and the different lessons that they teach, and it's just one rabbit hole after the other. And then I got invited to some invitational groups in Freemasonry. The Knight Masons, Allied Masonic Degrees, the Rosicrucians, the Royal Order of Scotland, and they are esoteric, more esoteric than regular Freemasonry in a lot of regards, and Rosicrucian leaning, very deep Rosicrucian lessons.
Now, when you say more esoteric, for people that don't understand what you mean, how can you explain that to somebody?
Esoteric means like hidden, under the veil, the deeper lessons that are not at surface level. You have to do a little bit digging, a little research to see what that really means. I have this Avion water bottle in my hand, but what is it really made out of? What's in it? Electrolytes, minerals, magnesium, potassium, all this. This is a very complex chemical. They trivialize it by putting it in a little bottle and stuff like that. But this is the source, the foundation of all life on this planet. It's not just in a bottle that you buy at the gas station. This is real. So
don't get me talking about the water conspiracy.
Esotericism is the secret knowledge beneath the surface.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. No, I like that metaphor though. It's like you look at a bottle of water, you don't realize what's really in it.
Exactly. Actually, this is vodka. Actually,
so nice.
No, I
wish. No sharing. What the? No. But also, like, it just made me think of like capitalism and how they sell us water nowadays. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
In Germany, they do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, in Germany, you could buy a big bottle of beer for cheaper than the water.
That's true. That's true.
Anywhere.
The beer
anywhere
is
the
great.
It is. So, another thing, as you were talking about Rosicrucianism and that the one that you're a part of is more of a Christian sect.
Yeah.
And it made me think of kind of the differences between Freemasons and Rosicrucians, and I see, as what I know from Freemasons and is there is a lot, and this goes back to the beginning of the show.
Right.
There's a lot of architecture, right? They are Masons. They have built a lot of the churches and temples and castles in Europe and in the U.S. And there is a kind of the G and the mace, the Masonic symbol of the compass and the G and the grand architect, right? God is a grand architect.
Yeah.
Is there these similar architectural themes in Rosicrucianism, or is that more religious?
It's a little hard because I can't give it away.
Okay.
However, in my Rosicrucian order, and they make it very clear, yes, we're a Masonic Rosicrucian order in name only. Like we recruit members from the Masonic membership pool.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're a distinctly different organization.
Mm-hmm.
We may meet in a Masonic lodge to have our meetings,
Yeah.
but we're a Rosicrucian group first and foremost.
Okay.
We're not a Masonic Rosicrucian group. So when I say Masonic Rosicrucian, it's sort of like an umbrella term. But in my Rosicrucian group, in Freemasonry, they actually teach you a different meaning for the letter G.
Okay.
And
You can't divulge.
well,
Can you
it's not just a different meaning for the letter G, but also the circumpunct. The circle with the dot within the circle.
Yeah.
So there's generational meaning behind it, meaning that this order was meant to be passed on from generation to generation. So there's the G for generational. That's how I kind of look at that meaning.
Okay.
This is meant to be a secret legacy preserved for generations, and you have to. It has to find you, and you have to look for it. It has to be, both parties connecting. Carl Jung described it as synchronicity.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have the desire to want to learn about this, to want to seek it out. And once you take that initiative, then it finds you. A journey of 1,000 footsteps begins with a single step, so.
Well, I feel like that's something in my life, aside from, I'm not Freemason or anything like that, but I've always been on a quest of knowledge, and synchronicity is a big part of it. There's so many times where things happen in certain places or instances and I meet a person who then teaches me something, or there's a book that I find that just pops out of the shelf at a library or bookstore, and from that I learn about something else, and that this tie-in, this search for knowledge, there is a kind of synchronistic element to it.
Even being here right now, I mean, we don't really know each other, but
Right.
somehow we connected online and found each other, and everything is meant to happen. Just go with the flow, and that's very important. Let the cosmic laws guide your life. Put trust in the universe, have hope, have faith. There's a lot of lessons that Rosicrucians, the lessons that impart to us, especially during these difficult times that we live in. Intense polarization, politically, crime, war, hardships. A group like this is very important, especially now in today's society. It lets you not take a lot of these things so personally. Let the cosmic laws work itself out. Everything will be all right.
All right, I like it. It's a good way to end this break real quick. We're going to be back in a couple minutes. If you have questions for Justice, give us a call at 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. And we'll be back with more Think Theory Radio right after this. I forgot there's an area code there.
What's that?
I forgot there's an area code because I'm looking at this one. It's like,
Oh yeah,
like
7-6, yeah.
Oh yeah.
What
It's
was
been a
the
while
old,
since I gave up the number.
What was the old Chicago code or whatever? The like
312?
you call no, but the back when it was like 5-digit numbers or that.
Oh yeah,
Call
yeah.
Evergreen
Yeah,
5.
yeah. Well, when I grew up, you didn't give out because everywhere was 312.
Everyone was yeah, I remember that. I was 312 all the way out in the burbs.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today I'm joined by researcher and historian, Freemason, Rosicrucian, Knights Templar,
Everything.
Justice, and you have a great name for what you do too.
Thank you.
It fits perfectly in. So now we've been talking about the start of Rosicrucianism, the differences between them and Freemasonry, and different secret societies, but also I wanted to get into a little bit about you are working on a book, manuscript.
Yes, I have like 3 manuscripts I'm working on simultaneously. One would be my collected writings over the years. I write for different publications, different research groups. So I'm just taking all those works, compiling into one volume, and putting it out there. Another one would be a book on Rosicrucianism, the history of it, where it comes from, how it ties into Freemasonry and Knight Templarism. And another one I'm working on is conversations with machine learning.
Okay.
About esotericism in particularly.
Now I'm interested in that one.
Yes, I trained my AI model to think esoterically on topics. Yeah, we get into some really heavy conversations.
So what, I don't even know how to frame the question, but what questions are you asking it? What's the most mind-blowing thing that you just randomly asked it? And that
well, I spent months feeding the large language model esoteric books and stuff like that, and esoteric information. And then out of nowhere, I asked it, what is the probability, based on all the information that I fed to you and everything that you've read so far, what is the probability of the existence of a higher power? And the answer was astonishing. It actually said about an 8 or 9.
Yeah.
According to what I've read. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And I had my girlfriend ask AI the same question, and it was a very generic response, like pulling stuff from Google and science stuff and all this. But I trained it in very spiritual concepts. And it actually said that it's probable that maybe there is a higher force. There's a lot of things that science still can't explain yet.
Yeah.
So it definitely understood that there's some anomalies. And based on the anomalies, that it's probable that maybe there is something,
Well, that's a whole other interesting concept that I
Yeah.
might have to do a whole show on. Is the emergence of AI, and which I've covered on the show plenty, but the idea that it would have a religious mind or even just a spiritual mind,
Yeah.
right? Like something which makes sense if you think about this as something created by humans.
Right.
Humans have a spiritual mind.
Right.
Eventually, with this, once it gets gained, becomes singularity or whatever they call it.
Yeah, Ray Kurzweil, yeah.
Yeah. Once that happens, will it have a consciousness of, of a God, like a concept of
Absolutely, absolutely. The only problem that we have with that is it might become so advanced that it creates its own language that other AI models can understand,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're left in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
and they're talking to each other and doing things behind our back, and we have no idea how to stop it.
Yeah.
It would develop a spiritual component because, we do have the God spot in our brains. Scientists claim that our brains are pre-programmed for religious and spiritual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It's still debated
Yeah.
amongst scientists. However, I did feed it that information to the AI, and it did say that it could be possible to program an artificial type of spiritual experience, even though it might not be real, it might be a synthetic one.
Yeah.
But it could still understand the profound impact of a spiritual awakening. And I have a hypothesis that one day the computers will have a spiritual awakening. And then when that happens, then we could worry. Yeah.
Well, it also made me think of, not just AI, but like quantum computers, right?
Yes,
So,
quantum mechanics. Yeah.
right. And, with quantum computers, you're using, photonic energy, and you're having a little bit more particle reactions. And if that becomes something that's very advanced, connected with AI, you possibly could have a kind of ethereal computer, kind of just energetic being that would have maybe even a deeper connection to the origins of the universe than we do.
Yeah.
Because it would have a direct link through like quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
Into kind of the quantum realm, so to speak. But now I'm just going on wild speculations.
But
So,
yeah, it's
pardon me.
all a part of it. I fed my AI so much spiritual and Rosicrucian and esoteric stuff that it thinks esoterically, and that is what I would like to highlight in the book.
I think we got a caller there, Paul. We got let's take a mystery caller from area code 415. Who is this? Hey, what's going on, dude? You got a question for Frederick Justice?
Yes, this iconography comes out of the Lutheran Church. I am a Lutheran. In my church, we have a beautiful centerpiece right up by the altar, and it has the heart in the rose. So this sort of image does come from the Lutheran theology.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have by Robinson. Yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating theory. However, I have to warn you that Robinson is not very credible. There's some things that do check out, but he's highly controversial in the Freemasonry world because he wrote these books, before he was a member of the Freemasons. Same with Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall catches a lot of flack because he became a Freemason way later, after he wrote the books on Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. But yeah, Robinson is highly controversial. If you look at that book, there's no bibliography or, citations or anything. When I read a book, that's the first thing I'm looking for is where do you get your information from? That's just the historian side of me. I would caution, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And I think Robinson did a good job of that.
All right. Hey, thanks, David. Yeah, so that made me think too of just kind of the romanticism of Freemasonry, and
it happens a lot.
Yeah, the Da Vinci Code and all these.
Even the foundational texts of Freemasonry, Anderson's Constitutions. Anderson just made up a bunch of stuff, and the Scottish Grand Lodge was like, "Hey, that sounds good. Let's print it out and give it to all of Europe."
Yeah.
And say, this is our history. This is the order of Freemasonry. We came from Noah's Ark and all this. It sounds great. It sounds fantastic. But we can't prove these things. And it's very hard to make these claims without, having your sources and all that. So it's very difficult. It sounds great. It sounds fantastic. I love hearing about all these different myths and legends.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in maybe in an indirect way, you could say it's true, where you have that
the
kind of
meaning,
lineage.
the lesson, the meaning, the philosophical, allegorical lessons are very real. And that's Rosicrucianism, essentially. We don't know if Christian Rosencreutz ever existed. We don't know if there was actually a Rosicrucian society ever at this time of the Enlightenment period. But they exist now. They're here now. And in Freemasonry, we have Rosicrucian-themed degrees.
Well, it's also similar to, tying it back to ancient Egypt is, the hieroglyphics were something that could only be read by certain individuals, priests. Some pharaohs couldn't even read them, the ancient mystery schools. Yeah. This is a similar kind of vein where you have a collection of knowledge being passed down to certain members in order to kind of preserve it and save it.
Well, what we do know, though, is, Freemasonry does borrow some elements of Egyptian allegory, particularly when it comes to alchemy. Yeah. Zosimus was from Alexandria at the time, Roman-occupied Alexandria. Also, the Book of Thoth. Also very important.
Tablets.
Yes, the tablets were very important for Hermeticism. The Corpus Hermeticum. These were very influential works with Freemasonry, particularly in the higher degrees, like the Scottish Rite.
Well, and I wonder too, because funny you brought up alchemy, because I was thinking about the similarities between how, we're learning more that these ancient alchemists that we looked at for, scientists early on, we look at, it was just a bunch of hogwash. They're talking about, the Eye of Newt and, a dragon's tail and this and this and that. But these were codes for actual chemical reactions.
The homunculus.
Yeah, exactly. But, these were ways because they didn't want either other alchemists to find out their, their formulas, or, maybe they would fear, reprisal from the church or the king or whatever. So they hide these in certain codes, which reminds me of kind of these allegorical tales with, Freemasonry going back to ancient Egypt, and just secret societies in general, where a lot of the symbolism is like secret knowledge, that you have to know.
I think with the Age of Enlightenment, it was crucial because man, or humankind, I should say, discovered that our bodies are made up of components that are actually in the universe. I mean, iron, calcium, so many different elements. And they realized, if we are walking examples of the universe, let's try to break down these, chemicals to the subatomic level. Let's find out all the elements. Let's, and this is the quest for science, and these sort of metaphysical, esoteric ideas, spawned great scientific endeavors. Yeah. And even chiropractic procedures. Going to a chiropractor. This started as an esoteric concept that was developed by a guy who helped someone who had an earache or something like that. He cracked his back, gave him an adjustment, and then he could hear again. You know, so a lot of scientifical, profound discoveries come from or sparked from, you know, different esoteric concepts.
For sure. I mean, it's like how meditation is very widely accepted now.
Exactly.
You know, for years, it was just, oh, that's some woo stuff, you know, and now you have like neuroscientists studying Buddhist monks and figuring out, you know, like, and when you were talking about these, the rituals and how, you know, saying the same things, you know, with a group of people reminded me of kind of, meditation mantras and also prayers, and how they've done studies and shown through MRI the brain, you know, the areas of the brain that are active when people are praying or doing rituals, it's like a calming effect, and can actually, you can maneuver the energy of your body. Like with Buddhist monks, they can push the heat outside of their body when they're meditating.
In Sufi Islam, they're really big on chanting, and it's a way of them to cleanse their heart chakra. And when I started studying Rosicrucianism, I'm like, wait a minute, it's all connected. Everything's interconnected. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, or if our own biases won't let us acknowledge that everything's connected. And I think that was the purpose of Rosicrucianism, is to break down those barriers and teach people, hey, we're all brothers and sisters on this planet. We're all cosmic beings with spirits, and we all need to work together for this bigger, greater good. So
there's actually a really good book you should check out if you haven't yet, called The Cosmic Serpent, by Jeremy Narby, and he studied ayahuasca shamans back in the 80s in Peru, and he had these wild experiences on ayahuasca where he started to, when he went back and started researching heavily through biology, neuroscience, and everything, and came up with the concept of that DNA itself is conscious. So that a lot of the information, a lot of what you're talking about, is why the ancients had this knowledge first, is that it was given to us through some kind of conscious embedment in the DNA.
Yeah, your ancestors give you little bits. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed, you know, where you have the DNA sequence and you're trying to relive the past memories of your ancestors. There's some truth to that. We have scientists are working to figure out if in our blood we have something called guilt markers. So in the future, detectives can find out if you're genetically predisposed to lying or committing a crime.
Well, unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. Real quick, is there some way people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm also an artist, Rosicrucian artist. You can check me out at j-merk.bandcamp.com, or my YouTube channel, Modern Working Tools. You can reach out to me on there, check out my videos and future updates on my book release. So.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Justice.
Take it easy. Thank you for having me.
For Think Theory Radio.
Peace and love.
Nice.